of us are interested in certain ideas that touch broader schemes of life. But one of them that I think is important for any aspirant, any man or woman who wants to know something of the divine, it's important to understand that we live, as is said, above as below, that this time of the year in particular, we come into this unique moment over a 12-month period that is the solstice. It is the time in which the earth, in her rotation, reaches a certain point in its relationship to the sun, where around the 21st or 22nd, approximating the time of the birth of Christ, there's a pivotal moment in which we have, over the period of these winter months, moved into more and more longer and longer periods of darkness, into a moment where all of that changes and we begin to move into periods of more and more light. We understand in the days of the seasons that there are times that we can see and all of us experience where there is more light and then gradually more darkness. But this time of the year, in the broad sense of its meaning, tells us that there does come in this life, in this existence, moments where what is dark seems to reach a certain point, a certain presence, but then because of something greater than its own ability to cling to its existence, there is a movement, and the next thing you know, into that darkness comes this light. This is the representation of Christ's life. But the important thing for us to understand is that the representation is also holds within it a realization for ourselves that at any given moment in our lives, when this darkness may reach a certain pitch, when our fear or sorrow or loneliness, our regrets, our resentments rise up as they do, that in those same moments, the same exact principles and truth are present, never not there. And that we as men and women have an opportunity, if we are aware of such things and are willing to go through what is necessary to produce that experience through our sacrifice of ourselves, which I will explain, to come into the real meaning of this birth of light and what it means to us. Essentially, that it represents the coming into a certain level of existence, this earth, this nature, a completely different order of understanding. And the unique thing about this new order of understanding is that that light doesn't struggle with the unwanted moments the way we do, just as light doesn't struggle with darkness when it enters into a room. Rather, that new understanding acts on these unwanted moments by changing the very nature inside of us that created the unwanted moment. So the struggle enters into a new level of existence, a new order of our own being that has always been present, just as the sun and the earth and its movements are always present. So many of us fight with life, doing the best we can with no doubt to produce what we believe will be productive in our behavior, in our relationships. But it should go without saying, and if it needs to be said, I know I will say it, most of that is for nothing. Because at any given moment, this nature that lives in the dark of us can raise its head and do with us as it wishes to do, and we are left wishing that we weren't that kind of person anymore. When all of the wishes in the world don't change who we are, only one thing can change who and what we are, this nature, and that is this new understanding, what is represented by the life of Christ. And if you're uncomfortable with that word, then use the divine. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. What matters is the principle and the way in which we as individuals discover the need to apply it. So in order to share this very broad idea, I have 3 stories to tell you tonight. How many of you like stories? We love stories. It's like field day. Remember when you were in school? You didn't have to do any work. You got to go look at stuff. When you listen to a story, you don't really have to do that much, but these stories are different. Because I want you to understand that in each of these stories, you and I are all of the characters and all of the conditions at the same time, which is the truth of all the parables in the Bible. All the stories in all Scripture, East and West, represent instances in our lives where parts of us, high and low, are in a relationship that is revealing something if we are capable of understanding all of those relationships as being inside of ourselves. So here's the first story. Take a nice deep breath. A man married a woman who had been married before and who had a young daughter. And the man and the young daughter were on their way to the home of the wife's parents that lived way out into the country. She was already there, and it was incumbent upon them to get to this family gathering on time. And as you know, these things don't always go the way you want them to go, and they get off to a late start. So try to imagine, here's the man and his daughter, young daughter, driving along these dark country roads, trying to find one of those streets that not only don't have signs on them, but you almost don't know it's a street when you go by. So you have to look for the old oak with the bent limb. You ever been on one of those? So there they are, and they're driving down the road, and it's getting darker and darker and darker. Now, what does that represent? They're on their way to a gathering, and things are getting darker and darker and darker. You know what that means, don't you? Stuff isn't going that well. He did this, she did that, something's wrong over there, what's the world coming to, and all the rest of that. And little by little by little, what happens to the man as he's driving? What happens to him? He's getting negative. What else does a man do when he's starting to grip the steering wheel? And then to make things even a little better, one of the lights on the right side begins to go, spit and fizz, and seems to be going out. Now that wouldn't be a problem, but he'd also been told that where his wife's parents lived in the deep country, that the roads themselves were often filled with pits, and that if there wasn't a pit, there might be an elk or a bear or even a skunk wandering around somewhere on the road. So here he is driving down the road thinking, is that a bear? Was that a skunk? Oh, missed the and he's so tense that he begins to speak to his daughter in not so friendly terms. And at some point, what's the passage? And a child shall lead them. She says to her father, Dad, just a thought, but why don't you try turning on your bright beams? I mean, they might be able to see further down the road, not to mention reveal anything hiding by the side of it. Now, we'll make him a good man instead of saying, I don't want to do that, or I don't think that'll work, or whatever. He says, Mike, you know what? He said, I don't know. I don't know why I thought of that. How many of you know why he didn't think of it? Come on. What are my possibilities when I'm so identified with something and afraid? 0. And what does she say to him? Turn on your bright beams. And of course, finally he does that. And he says to her, I completely forgot that I could use them. Thank you, sweetheart. You're welcome, Dad. And everything becomes pleasant in the car, and they arrive at the home safe and sound. Yay. Exactly. Now, don't you wish it was that easy? Someone walks into your office, phone call, email, just the news. God help this world. And right in the middle of all that tumult, all of that anger, the frustration over whatever it may be, to just turn on your bright beams. Remember that song? Turn on your heart light. To be able in that moment, listen, first major point, to remember that even at this level of being in a car at night and being nervous because I can't see and I'm afraid I'm going to miss something valuable, that I can turn on the brights. I can add another level of light to the situation. Translation, I can bring another order of understanding into something that clearly I'm not understanding, or I wouldn't be tense. Take a deep breath. We have to make an important point. How many of you think that when you're really negative, it's the proof you really know what you're thinking about? You know what that means. The more negative I get, the more sure I am that everything else is wrong. Isn't that true? Come on, you better nod your heads. I won't get off the point till you admit it. There's a person over there going, I'm not going to admit that. I'm not going to admit that. Yeah, it's true. There's something inside of us that the more it suffers, the more convinced it is that it's right about what it's suffering over. And that's lunacy. Suffering doesn't prove that we know what we're doing. Stress and anger doesn't prove that we're near perfection. Negative states are the complete evidence that we are missing an understanding that if we could call upon it in the moment would make the crooked way straight, would lighten up the road, and we would see not only what's in front of us, but what is from side to side. I don't know about you, but that seems like a better way to go through life. Do you not think so? All right. Now, it sounds simple to turn on your brights. But this is a metaphor for a new kind of understanding. And by a new kind of understanding, I'm talking about the need that we have as human beings, lost. I better explain that. You know, people don't like it. I'm not lost. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. It's just that most of the time it doesn't feel that way because the road rolls out okay. But we're not talking about the road rolling out okay in front of us. We're talking about those moments that visit us literally almost daily, if not, where we're taken over by a fear or an anger, a regret, a resentment, something that we wish wasn't happening, and that we find ourselves clutching the steering wheel of our existence and trying to figure out how we're going to get to where we have to get to so that we can get rid of the pain. The first thing that has to happen to a man or a woman that wants to have any relationship with Christ, with what is divine, with what is holy, however you want to express that, is they have to understand the necessity of honesty. But here's the rub. We're not very honest. We live with a nature, a level of our own mind that is so fast, so quick to come up with an explanation or justification for why we're negative, that the next thing you know, we're identified with our own explanation and believe it's right from the mouth of God. Yes or no? And one of the reasons for this dishonesty, which by the way, disparages not only ourselves, but our whole relationship with life, is because we have been taught by the world that has raised us that somehow or other to be angry, to be afraid, to be worried, to be nervous, to have regrets or resentments, that somehow to see these qualities in our nature proves that there's something wrong with us. So the answer is to hide those things from ourselves. Isn't that how we're taught? Don't be like that. How do you want me to be? I want you to be nice. Okay. And then I'm trying to do this. And then my computer crashes. Or somebody does something and you know exactly what happens. Pop goes the weasel. It is so hard to be honest. And yet, if we can't learn what it means to be honest and how this honesty can come into our lives, listen, and make us whole, what are we to do? And this is where, again, returning to what I said at the start of the talk, the idea of the advent of this light, of a new level of understanding, a new order of being that has linked together this nature that is dishonest with itself, that does not want to see itself for fear of somehow or other being less than it's imagined itself to be, that has tied that together with the possibility of something that is not only willing to see that nature, but that isn't afraid of it. And the reason that it's not afraid of it, like we are of ourselves, is because it understands that whatever will be brought into its radiation, into its light, will be changed by its relationship to it. So that it doesn't worry about what to do with things. Its very nature makes things right. And that lives in us. There's a passage, speaking of new knowledge, there's a passage in John. And please don't reject this. If you trend towards being resistant to what you take as being a religion that has either betrayed you or that has beat you into a pulp. That's the doing of men and women with no understanding, not the doing of those from whom the understanding came that has been maligned. Thus spake Jesus unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. Now, what that means, literally, translated into the original language that it was given in, is that Christ was saying, I am this nature that by its presence reveals to anyone willing to receive it an awareness of their nature. That's what it means. I am the light of the world. I am that energy, that force, that presence that reveals to whom it will the actual nature of themselves. And whoever agrees to that, not follows this person, whoever agrees to that relationship shall not walk in darkness. And by darkness, Christ is referring to, again, in the ancient language, those parts of this nature that do not want to know themselves and do not want anyone else to know them save for what we try to appear to be. And he shall have the light of life. He or she will have the understanding that changes the consciousness responsible for the condition instead of the false understanding that keeps trying to change conditions to suit the image that we have of ourselves. You still with me? Another order of light that grants a new level of understanding. Now, take a deep breath. I want you to do some work. That's what we're doing here. What do you think is the purest form of understanding? Really think about it. What would you say is the purest form of understanding? Is it something that we think about? No, it's not, is it? The purest form of understanding is a direct relationship with what it is that we're looking at. That is the purest form of understanding, where the observer and the observed are not separate, but rather something binds them together in a unity that allows the one doing the observing to realize, that quality, that character, and the meaning of it lives in me. So the purest form of understanding is what happens when an individual recognizes that he or she is not separate from what they're looking at. That's the purest form of understanding. And I would add that in that understanding, there can be no arguments about it. There's no disputing it. Now, we get the bright side of that. We see a beautiful night sky. We see the madrone leaves when they first start to freeze. If you ever see with your car lights and it looks like 1,000 Christmas trees, you don't have to think to yourself, what does that mean? You are wrapped in the beauty of it, and you can't enjoy it enough. Why? Because what you see by a certain light within you is showing you that this is within me as well, and I love what I see. How many of you love when you see beautiful things? Raise your hands. How many of you hate when you see hateful things? It's the same principle. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's exactly the same principle. Only we have been over time put in a situation where literally all of that is lost. I want to jump ahead to something that I was going to tell you later, but I want to put it in now. Long, long ago, when men and women were truly sincere in their wish to understand spiritual matters, life wasn't divided up into 90% my home, my business, and 5% time when I have a chance to do something for my interior life. These individuals found schools, monasteries, temples, where they were trained. Now listen, the principal activity of the priests or the monks was to train these individuals to be able to learn to recognize the light when it came. That's what they were taught, to be able to recognize the light when it came. Not some silly, nonsensical, sentimental, spiritual junk. The light. No, to recognize the light when it shines inside of you. But we, as men and women, have lost the capacity to recognize the moment of light when it shines in us. Why? Because when it shines on us, it shows us something that our nature says, no, that's not me. It's wrong to be like that. And it deflects the light. It pushes away the very thing that has the power to change the consciousness that it's revealed. So our true spiritual work has to do with learning to recognize the things that most of us deny instantly, push away, resist, or oppose. Most of those things is denying the light, because what we're pushing away seems to be what we don't want, when what we're pushing away is what we have been shown about our own nature. Still with me? Now, let's get to the next story. Take a deep breath. Each story that I tell you is one of 3 parts. And when we're done with the third story, we'll see how they all tie together to help us gradually recognize that this new understanding, it's not a question of going and looking for it. It's a question of agreeing to let it do within us what it is intended to do. So once there was a little girl who had reached the age, I don't know if you remember this, how many remember the age where if it was possible, like for instance, when I grew up, I had to live with my idiot brother in the same room. I mean, I love him, but who wants to live with a living sloth? You know, who snores even at the age of 5. That's the truth. He had a deviated septum. Anyway, I remember going to Mom and Dad saying, I want my own room. Anybody ever remember those moments in your life? I want my own room. Because that was like, I want my own car. I want my own space. And the little girl goes to her parents, I want my own room. And the Mom and Dad talk about it. All right, we can work this out. And so they do. And so they get her set up in her own little room. And of course, she's a young little girl. And you have to put a night light in the room because of all the stuff. And you don't ever close the door all the way. These are things that are actually represent a certain stage in a person's development. A person says, I'm going to be my own person. Will you help me? Yeah. So first night, what do you think happens? She's laying in bed, eyes are open like this, and by the nightlight happening to hit the closet that was partly ajar, she could see what looked to her in the moment like something looking back at her in the closet in the dark. So the first move is always covers over the head. But that actually makes things worse if you don't remember this. You know why it makes things worse? Because now you're left completely to your imagination. You won't see it come when it gets you. That was my problem. So she does the only thing that a young girl can do, which is she goes into her parents' room. Can I sleep with you? I thought you wanted your own room. I do. Well, why are you here? There's something in the closet. There's a shadow. I don't think so, sweetie. Yeah, there is. I'm positive. He says, all right, come on. And he takes her by the hand. They walk into the bedroom, and they both get up on the bed and put some pillows there where they can sit up. Still dark. Still shadows being cast by the nightlight in the closet. And he says to her, sweetheart, listen carefully. Listen carefully, my friends. He said, I want you to watch and listen to what I do next. He knows that he's going to teach her something that she could never learn in any other way. Just as within you lives something that can teach you something you cannot learn in any other way if you are in its presence. And he sits up and he says, you there, pointing at the closet. You there, whatever's hiding in there, come out of that shadow right now. He looks at his little girl. Come on, I want to see you more closely. Come out right now, little girl. He repeats it again. You, whatever's in that shadow, in the closet, you come out. And he does that 3 or 4 times. And then he turns to her and says, sweetheart, you say it now. Oh, no. No, you say it. Okay, you there. First step. Don't imagine yourself strong. There's nothing worse that you can do. There's nothing worse than you can do. You there, in the closet, in the shadow. Come out. No. Come out. And she does that. And he finally gets her to say it out loud. And what do you think happens? Nothing happens. He says, what do you think's going on here? She goes, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't want to come out. He says to her, well, then you know what we're going to do? Oh, no. Come on. Where are we going? You and I are going to go into that shadow together and prove that there's nothing in the closet that can hurt us. Are you up for it? No. Come on. Proper relationship between a parent and a child. Teaching the child not to get it over with for themselves, but because they've understood from their own spiritual development the necessity of a new understanding that even at the level of a child, just as the divine looks at us that same way, I tell you, come on, don't be afraid. And together they walk over, they open the closet door, they turn on the closet light, and there's nothing in there, is there? How many times do you walk over to the shadow in the closet when the things don't go the way you want them to and say, I want to see you. I want to see you. I want to understand this nature that's there, all negative and full of anger and fear. I want to see you that's hiding there. You tell me to look outside and to run from the circumstance. I want to see you directly. When was the last time that you understood inwardly what it meant to recognize in such moments that it was possible? Well, let's look at the situation. What exactly did the little girl learn? What exactly did the little girl learn? Remember we said that the purest form of understanding isn't in thought. So this was an emotional, physical, visceral experience for her, wasn't it? And what was the experience? What was the experience? Come on.
She had to see for herself.
I was wrong. I saw something that wasn't there. How many of you see people that you think are enemies? Relationships, past or fears of the future. You fill in the blank. And you go on hiding under the covers or getting out swords and shields and trying to figure out how you can survive the encounter with something as terrible as what you see, when the fact is you do not see what's there. You see what your mind is telling you is there so that it can stand and keep its grip on you and keep you living from its understanding, which is why we fight with life the way we do, instead of inviting the light as is possible for us to bring a new understanding into our lives that makes all fighting impossible. I mean that, by the way. So she learns that whatever the dark shape and character that she had imagined does not exist without that part of herself that is actually looking at what is its own reflection, its own projection. She learned that. The possibilities of an individual recognizing, again, as above, so below. Take a deep breath. Let's look at this. Can you imagine maybe an archaeologist looking for the lost tomb of something, not to find riches, but because perhaps he'd heard somewhere down the line that some magnificent manuscript containing many of the truths that have been lost over the millennia was in there. And here's a tomb, and it's been sealed just as it was for the apocryphals. You know, here's a stone mason's jar plugged with wax, and it's been in the dark for thousands of years. Does the darkness that held that manuscript, that body of truth, does the darkness that is there all that time, can it do anything at all when the seal is lifted? Can it? No. It must allow the light to come into itself. It has to do it. It's a law. And if that's true, if you can understand it, that what is physically in the dark can't hide from the light that is brought into it, how much more so is it true when it comes to the darkness in ourselves and the spiritual light, the Christ, what you will, can be brought into it? Is there anything it can do to hide itself? Is there anything it can do to hide itself? I don't know how to say certain things, even though it's given to me to tell you. What is divine isn't afraid of the things you're afraid of. It isn't part of its nature to worry about anything in any form of darkness, because it understands that in one way or another, and I hope you can follow me, that that very thing that has been in the darkness exists for the purpose of receiving that light, that it can be changed and eventually actually reflect and glorify the very light that it hid from its whole time on earth. That's a spiritual fact. That's a spiritual fact. You could literally bank on that. What does it profit a man to have gained the whole world and to have lost his soul? At any rate, that order of divine light that we're talking about, that already lives within us, is in fact the effect of is the expression of a higher order of understanding, again, that doesn't require thought, that is made possible in the individual by its presence and what its presence makes aware in that person of itself. So that, how do I say it? So that the very thing that we spend most of our lives hiding from ourselves, not wanting anybody to know anything about, the new understanding of it is not only inclusive, but actually integrates all that we have kept from ourselves into a new order of ourselves that doesn't have the same fear because it's not hiding anything anymore. So we're speaking of another order of understanding. Now listen, because this is the next important thing. We're getting ready to go to the next story. That by its very existence has command over what it reveals. Can you see that? Does not the light have command over anything in the room, meaning that whatever is there in the dark of the room, that light, it reveals it, it's done. Same thing with understanding. Imagine, example, a woodsman spends his whole life living somewhere in the woods, in the dark woods where he gathers wood and does what woodsmen do. Well, and his brother comes from some city slicking place. I don't know where he's from. Now, the woodsman, is he afraid of what's in the woods? Why? He understands what's in the woods. Why does he understand what's in the woods? Because he spends all of his time there. His brother, on the other hand, comes and he looks at the deep, dark woods, and what does he say? I'm going back to the city because there will be creatures in there that can consume me. We have in our nature parts of ourselves that are in fact consuming us. Do you know that when you're angry, you're being consumed? Which would be better? To bring that nature into something that by its very presence transforms that anger into something that is illuminating and life-changing, or to live with that through the rest of your life and allow it to tell you who you are and what your possibilities are. So we're talking about a new kind of command. Here we go. Last story. Take a deep breath. Some stories I love. This is one of those. It's very simple. A great lion. You've seen them. Magnificent creatures. Massive mane. What was the name of the lion in the witch? Aslan. Think of Aslan, this marvelous, beautiful, noble creature. And he's walking around and he hears a kind of muffled crying coming from a bush. And he walks over, and there in the bush, crying, is hiding his young son, who isn't quite his father yet, but he is a lion. He's got a little mane going. And he looks at his son. He said, what are you doing in there? What are you doing in there? Well, what happened, he said, was that, and I hate to say it, I was trying to show my younger brothers and my sisters in the pride what it was like to be as strong as I am. And I did that in the presence of a troop of juvenile baboons, our enemies. And it was great while there was only two of them there. And the next thing you knew, there was 3 or 4 or 5 of those little buggers, and they snarled, and I buckled. I ran, and everybody saw me run. That's why I'm in the bushes. I don't want anybody to know what I am. Well, he could do that, or he could blame everything and everyone. You choose the fight or flight path. And his father turns to him and he says, son, come here. Come out. Come on. Comes out. He says, son, I want you to listen to me. Even if you can't understand yet or apply what I'm telling you, you must never forget the following. You are created to rule this jungle. But the command that you seek cannot be found in pretending to be strong. You must never pretend to be strong. You're the king of the jungle. Your authority to be fearless in the presence of any of the creatures here is already a part of your nature, son. You were born with it, which means, son, there's nothing for you to do other than to remember to be who you are. This is the spiritual secret buried and hidden by a culture and a society of religion that wants to breed dependency in individuals upon creed and dogma so as to produce a nature that believes that it must go looking for something in the moment of a challenge on that dark road. When there's something in the closet, it must go find something, look for something in order to be able to deal with what is frightening it or what has overcome it. When the truth is that within you lives something that has already overcome the whole thing. But the question is, do you have inwardly a new understanding you have now, but do you have the resolve to recognize, you know what, this is true. I tend, when the rubber hits the road, I tend to go looking for, meaning my thoughts and feelings go racing around trying to figure out what I have to do in order to deal with this situation. And what I'm teaching you is that the situation is not the condition that your nature is pointing to. Your situation is a projection of a level of self that exists in the dark that can only exist outside of the light. And the resolution to it, the reconciliation to this nature is in the moment when things go the way you don't want them to go, to remember the truth of yourself as best you can and stand in it. Stand in the awareness of your weakness. Stand in the awareness of your anger. Stand in the awareness of the fear that is rifling through you. Why? Because when you stand in that light of awareness, you are standing in an order of consciousness that cannot be deceived into defeating itself the way we are when we go off taking the directions of that lower nature. Are you following me? Putting this all together, it means simply that, and we always have an exercise every time that we talk and meet, it is to recognize that there is in fact a need for new knowledge. It's an amazing thing that what I understand about any given moment can't be any better than my self-understanding, and I keep running into the same moments and can't realize that the reason the moment keeps repeating is because my understanding doesn't change. And the only way my understanding can change is when I bring light into the darkness of it. And then I am given what I need. The revelation of this nature that defeats itself, that stands on its own toe, or that blames the world for its bitterness, the revelation of that nature is your release from it. But your rejection of that nature produced by blaming or deflecting the world that shows that nature to you, that is the continuation of that nature. This time of the year, in one respect, happens every 12 months, but in another respect, in a divine world, this time is always happening in us. It is the beginning in every moment. It is the advent in every moment. It is the opportunity to call upon a light that never leaves you, but rather you turn away from it trying to save yourself. So we've had 3 stories. First story about turn on your brights. Can you see now, what does it mean to turn on your brights? You there in the closet, I want to see you. Come out. Turn on the brights means I'm going to apply the understanding that even though I'm angry and afraid, clearly it's my own consciousness projecting itself on the situation. So what I'm going to do is dare to reveal myself to myself. And lastly, to do all of that by remembering that's what I'm meant to do. That is your true nature. Since the beginning of time, wherever truths were given out, wherever men and women assembled for the purpose of coming into a relationship with what is divine, the heart and soul of all of that could be boiled down to, you have forgotten yourself, man, you have forgotten yourself, woman. And everything that you need can be regained in the moment that you're willing to stand there in the remembrance that within you already lives what makes the crooked places straight. Just be willing to stand in that light and let it do what it will do for you.